If you're struggling to navigate into the future, I've got some help for you. I've got two what ifs and a so what. The first what if is a shift in attitude towards the future. What if we live at a remarkable Kairos moment in history, a moment of immense opportunity and change for those who recognize it? The ancient Greeks used this word Kairos to talk about an opportune moment in history, something that had never been experienced before but brought opportunity for those who were ready and able to seize it. What happens if that's where we live in history? And the future is not something to be scared of, not something that will disrupt us and destroy everything that we know, but rather bring amazing new opportunities, growth, and excitement. Well, what if, secondly, all of the things that are likely to change our future, all of these forces that are likely to bring this Kairos opportunity to us, what if we already know about them? What if they are already here? They're not black swans. That's a label I'm sure you're familiar with, which talks about unexpected events, unexpected things that nobody's ever experienced before, that we've got to look hard for and maybe never find. What happens if, instead of being black swans, the forces that are going to shape this era of opportunity are actually more like elephants in the room? Great grey elephants sitting there just waiting for you to notice them. If you don't notice them, they might trample you, but if you do notice them, they give you this opportunity. So what? Well, you've got to open your eyes to that opportunity. You've got to be prepared to grasp what's coming at us. You've got to be tuned towards the change that's coming. See the opportunities as they come hurtling towards us, because if we're unprepared, if we're unwilling, if we maybe are even afraid to act, these opportunities can pass us by, maybe hurting us as they do. Once a Kairos moment has passed, it's too late to take advantage of that. And most Kairos moments in history are things that have never happened before. And so you can't just bring previous experience and expertise to bear. You've got to have new approaches and new insights. So the so what, before I tell you what I think the great grey elephants are that we should be taking account of, let me maybe just give you some things that we should be doing differently. The so what is we need to change how we approach the future and change some of what we do in ourselves, in our teams, and in our organizations to prepare ourselves to be aware of and take advantage of this Kairos moment. So what should we do? I think there are 5 things. The first is tune into the future, tune into change. The second is build ecosystems around you, resilient ecosystems that are built on partnerships and extending and expanding the group of people, the group of organizations that you are part of that actually looks at the future. Nobody's going to be able to grasp this Kairos moment on their own or in their little silo. So extend your ecosystem, which leads to the third thing, which is to be more inclusive, more diverse. And diversity is not just about engaging with other human beings who see the world in different ways. It's also about being bionic and engaging with machines and machine learning and the technology age in which we live. So be more inclusive as you build those ecosystems. The fourth is to be experimental explorers. Put on a mindset of exploration and a mindset of experimentation to open yourself up to the future. You're not going to be able to see the Kairos opportunity using yesterday's logic and old patterns of thinking. We've got to draw new maps, I suppose is a way of putting it. Be an explorer. And finally, we believe that you've got to adjust your business mindset to be a force for good. Yes, you want to make a profit so that you can continue doing what you're doing and be sustainable. Yes, you've got stakeholders and shareholders in particular to look after. But we believe that the businesses that are going to do the best in this Kairos era are going to be those that focus on being a force for good as these great grey elephants make themselves known. So, what are these great grey elephants? If that's the Kairos moment we find ourselves in, if those are some of the things you have to do in order to take advantage and be prepared for the Kairos moment, well then let's tune ourselves in to the forces that are likely to shape this Kairos moment. And we think that there are at least 7 that you should be focusing your attention on. And very briefly, here they are. The first is aging. This is a great example of us finding ourselves at a moment of history that hasn't happened before. More than half of all the people who've ever turned 80 are still alive. By the end of this decade, around about half of the world's population is going to be what we used to call old. About 1 in 3 people in Europe is going to be over the age of 60 by just 2030. And by 2050, there are going to be way more people over the age of 60 than there are under the age of 20 in the world. Population pyramids are now going to be population skyscrapers, with lots of people living well beyond 100. In fact, you might be one of those people. I certainly plan to be one of those people. Now, how does that change the world? Well, it changes the products and services that the average person is prepared to pay for and desires and wants. It changes the profiles of families. One of the reasons for this shift in aging is that families look different. We're having fewer children. We're having those children later in life. And all of these things cause a different shape to the world. It impacts who your customers are, it impacts how much they've got to spend, it impacts what they want to buy from you, but it also impacts who you should employ, how long you employ them for, when they retire, and so on. So aging and shifting demographics is the first big elephant in the room. We know it's there, we've been thinking about it for a while, but now is the Kairos moment of opportunity that you don't want to let pass you by. The second great grey elephant sitting in the corner of the room waiting to be noticed is an angry planet. Now again, some of this you know, and it's very familiar: climate change, extreme weather, and so on. But there are a few other things that are going to now become Kairos moments. And they are threats if we don't take them seriously, but they're huge opportunities as well. Just on the climate change issue, there's massive opportunities. At the recent COP summit that was held, governments and private companies put forward ideas worth more than $1.5 trillion. These are investment opportunities for people who come up with ideas in order to respond to climate change and extreme weather. That money is waiting to be invested. You could get some of it if you had great ideas. There are opportunities to be grabbed. But an angry planet is more than just the things we're already familiar with. It's issues like pollution. It's issues like plastic and our world being overwhelmed with plastics, and there must be and will be a shift away from plastics in the next little while. As difficult as that might be, it might happen faster than you imagine. Threats, yes. Opportunities, absolutely. And so the list goes on. We can talk about future bugs and viruses and antibiotics stopping working. An angry planet. The third area is multipolarity, and We're going to come back to all of these over the next few weeks. So follow me if you want more detailed information on each of these. But very briefly, multipolarity emerged as a concept in Russia in the 1990s, as many senior members of the Russian government realized they couldn't compete head-to-head with America. And they didn't want America to become the massive singular world power. They needed to create a multipolar view of the world with lots of different power bases. The EU is one, but Russia, China, India, there was a thought of the three of them combining to create a balancing power in the world. That hasn't quite happened as planned. But Vladimir Putin has been talking about this for 25 years. And those people who have been prepared to listen will know that he was always going to attempt to, firstly, recover the old Russian Federation, the old USSR, and do what he can to bring some of those old states back into Russia. And then secondly, to form alliances with initially China and India, but anybody else really who sees the world in the same way that Russia does, to create this multipolar world. Does that mean globalization is dead? No, it doesn't. But it means that we need to see globalization through a different lens of multipolarity, which includes globalization and regionalization and alliances based on different connections that we haven't seen before. Multipolarity has been in the system. It's an elephant in the room that many people have been ignoring for the last little while. We can ignore it no longer. Putin is in his end game. That leads us to the next grey elephant, which is big squeezes. People are feeling squeezed in many different ways, maybe even personally, you feeling squeezed. And it's easy to just think, well, that's the aftermath of COVID, the aftermath of lockdowns, a little bit of trauma we've experienced. But it's more than that. It's political, it's economic, it's societal, it's cultural. Maybe from an economic perspective, the best example is inflation. Some countries, especially in the developing world, the global south, we've lived with inflation for years, but now the developed world, the northern hemisphere, is experiencing inflation for the first time in a few decades. We can understand inflation conceptually, but it's now beginning to squeeze our businesses. Supply chains are squeezed. Consumers are squeezed. Labor unions are responding with labor action like never before. More people are on strike now than I think at any one time in history. This comes from the big squeeze. It also comes from the next grey elephant, which is inequality. The rich have got richer, much richer in the last few years, and the poor have got a lot poorer in the last few years. And when wealth divides happen globally, well, revolution comes next. The sixth grey elephant is intelligent advances. Of course, this has got to do with the digital age that we live in, artificial intelligence, machine learning. But this is more than just saying robotic automation and AI is coming. This is asking about whether we are making decisions about artificial intelligence on the basis of what's good for the machines or what's good for productivity in our businesses, or whether we are making these decisions on the basis of what's good for us as people, for human beings. And if we've got a big squeeze and inequality already in the system, and then artificial intelligence and robotic automation begins to look like a threat to the majority of the world's laborers, well, that leads to the final piece of our puzzle, which is angry people. So you can see how all of these fit together, and there's a big story to be told. Maybe there's another way to look at intelligence advances, which is a more human-centered approach. And the opportunity, the Kairos moment, is to solve big problems and use technology to improve the way that we live on Earth, rather than simply using technology to go down the path that we were already going down, which might lead to even more angry people and a more broken planet. And that really is the point of the story, right? That there are lots of forces at play, catalysts to deep disruptive change, that if we're not alive to the opportunity, they could trample over us. They could be huge threats to our lives and to the world that we live in. But if we are open to this Kairos moment, if we are open to the opportunities that these changes could bring, well, then a wonderful future is available to us. And to remind you, we have to be tuned to the change, open to those opportunities. Secondly, build partnerships and ecosystems that will help us to take advantage of that opportunity. Be inclusive, diverse, and open to incorporating a bionic view of a human future. We need to be experimental explorers of new territories, and we need to, above all, make sure that everything we do is seen as a force for good in the world. If we do all of that, we will live in a remarkable world. We will open up a wonderful future, and we will be ready to grasp the Kairos moment as it comes hurtling towards us. This is what we do at Tomorrow Today. We identify the forces of change. We see the world changing, we make sense of it, and we help organizations not just see tomorrow, but work out what they need to do to prepare for it today. Please make sure that you contact us for more information about how you do that, and follow me to get more in-depth information about this Kairos moment and the grey elephants that are shaping it.